The image is burned into my memory. 17-year-old Tyler being led away in handcuffs while his mother's furious screams echoed through the street. Karen Wilson stood rigid, her perfectly pressed blazer catching the afternoon sun, her HOA president badge gleaming like a crown. Her face was flushed with rage as she jabbed a finger at Officer Martinez. "You can't do this. I run this neighborhood. I know your captain," she shrieked, her voice high-pitched and shattering, like glass cracking under pressure. Tyler, unshaken, smirked over his shoulder at the gathering crowd of neighbors. Hands cupped behind his back, he wore the same cocky expression he always had. "This is all a mistake," he called out with the arrogant confidence he had displayed for weeks. "My mom will have me out in an hour." The neighbors, who had spent months fearful of crossing Karen, peeked cautiously from behind curtains and half-open doors. Justice was finally catching up with the family that had ruled Maple Grove Estates through intimidation and entitlement for far too long. But let me rewind a few weeks to how this all began. I had just moved into this picture-perfect suburban neighborhood, where manicured lawns stretched in every direction and strict HOA rules were posted on every corner. At first, I thought I'd hit the jackpot with my new house on Elm Street, but then my packages started disappearing. It began innocuously enough. I'd order something online, the tracking would show delivered, but nothing would be on my porch when I returned home from work. I chalked it up to delivery errors, or maybe a few rogue porch pirates from outside the neighborhood. After all, Maple Grove was supposed to be one of the safest communities in the city, with Karen Wilson's iron grip keeping everything in perfect order. The third time it happened, I decided to ask my neighbor, Mrs. Chun, if she had noticed anything unusual. She was trimming her rose bushes when I walked over, and the moment I mentioned the missing packages, her face tightened with unease. "Oh, dear," she whispered, glancing nervously around as if someone might be listening. "You should really check with the Wilson boy. I've seen him wander in the neighborhood a lot lately." She wouldn't say more, but the way her gaze shifted toward the imposing Wilson house at the end of the street told me everything I needed to know. That evening, I installed a doorbell camera. 2 days later, the evidence was undeniable. The footage showed Tyler Wilson strolling up my walkway in broad daylight, snatching my package as casually as if he were picking up his own mail. He even whistled while doing it, as if the theft were part of his daily routine. I watched the video 3 times, each viewing raising my blood pressure further. This wasn't some desperate teenager stealing food. This was the HOA president's son, treating our neighborhood like his personal playground. I marched straight to the Wilson house, my phone loaded with irrefutable evidence, expecting a simple, reasonable conversation. Karen opened the door wearing her signature power suit and that condescending smile, reserved for anyone she deemed beneath her. "Well, hello there, new neighbor," she said, her voice syrupy with false sweetness. "What can I do for you today?" I explained about the stolen packages and showed her the footage. Instantly, her expression shifted from fake cordiality to icy hostility. "That's quite an accusation you're making," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And frankly, I find it insulting that you come to my home making wild claims about my son." I tried to remain calm, pointing out that the evidence was clear and my only request was for my packages to be returned and the theft to stop. Karen simply crossed her arms, delivering the glare she probably practiced in front of a mirror, the one meant to intimidate and coerce apologies. "Tyler is an honor student and captain of his debate team," she said, her tone condescending, as if explaining basic facts to a child. "He would never stoop to petty theft. Perhaps you should check your delivery confirmations more carefully before making accusations." Then came the thinly veiled threat wrapped in HOA jargon. "I'd suggest you choose your battles very carefully in this neighborhood. As president of the Homeowners Association, I take false accusations against residents very seriously, especially when they target outstanding young people like my son." But the theft didn't stop, they escalated. Over the next week, Tyler grew bolder, taking packages in broad daylight, and even waving at my camera once. When I caught him red-handed carrying off a neighbor's delivery, I called out from across the street. His response sent a chill down my spine. "Hey, mister," he said with a smirk that mirrored his mother's arrogance. "My mom runs this whole neighborhood. I'm basically untouchable here. Maybe you should think about moving somewhere else if you don't like how things work in Maple Grove Estates." Tyler actually laughed as he walked away with the stolen goods, utterly confident that his mother's influence would shield him from any consequences. It was in that moment I realized this wasn't just about missing packages. It was about a family that believed they were above the law simply because of a petty neighborhood title. Determined to uncover the truth, I began talking to other neighbors. And what I discovered was both shocking and infuriating. The Hendersons had lost 4 packages in the past month. The Johnsons were missing a birthday gift for their daughter. Even elderly Mr. Peterson had his prescription medication stolen right from his porch. Every single person I spoke to suspected Tyler, Mrs. Shin admitted, but nobody wanted to say anything because they feared Karen's retaliation. She can make life very difficult if you cross her. She shook her head. Last year, she tried to find the Smiths $500 because their grass was half an inch taller than HOA regulations. I knew then that I couldn't face this alone. I convinced 6 neighbors to join me in documenting Tyler's activities. We set up a group chat, coordinated surveillance, and began monitoring the neighborhood closely. Within 3 days, multiple cameras captured Tyler in the act, stealing packages from homes across Maple Grove Estates. The evidence was overwhelming, revealing a clear pattern of theft that had been ongoing for months. Armed with this proof, I requested a meeting with the HOA board, determined to present our case and demand action. Karen's response was swift and entirely predictable. She scheduled the meeting for a Tuesday morning, when most working residents couldn't attend, and spent the entire session dismissing our evidence as doctored videos and a personal vendetta against her family. This is clearly a personal vendetta by residents who don't appreciate the high standards I've maintained in this community, she declared to the 3 board members who had shown up, her longtime supporters. When I tried to show the video evidence, she ruled it inadmissible and threatened anyone who continued what she called defamatory behavior. The meeting was a sham, but it taught me an important lesson about dealing with petty tyrants. You can't beat them by playing within their rig system. You have to go around them entirely. That evening, I organized all the evidence into a comprehensive report and drove straight to the police station. Detective Sarah Martinez listened patiently as I explained the situation, reviewed the video footage, and examined the documentation we had compiled. "This is actually impressive police work," she said with a small, approving smile. "You've got multiple angles, timestamps, and clear identification. We can definitely work with this." The investigation moved faster than I had expected. Within 2 days, Detective Martinez had interviewed several neighbors and confirmed the pattern of theft. She also discovered that Tyler had been selling some of the stolen items online, escalating the charges from simple theft to organized retail crime. When she called to inform me that they were making an arrest, I felt a surge of satisfaction. "We'll be picking him up after school tomorrow," she explained. "And given the evidence, we're confident about prosecution." The next afternoon, I happened to be working in my front yard when the police cars arrived at the Wilson house. Seeing Tyler read his rights while Karen screamed at the officers was better than any movie I'd ever watched. "This is harassment," she shrieked as her son was placed in the back of a patrol car. "I'll have your badges for this. Do you know who I am?" Detective Martinez remained calm and professional, explaining that Tyler was being charged with multiple counts of theft, trafficking in stolen property, and organized retail crime. The look on Karen's face as she realized that her HOA title meant absolutely nothing to real law enforcement was priceless. That evening, the neighborhood erupted in celebration. People who had lived in fear of the Wilsons for years were finally free to speak openly. Mrs. Peterson started a petition to remove Karen from the HOA board, and within 24 hours, over 80% of residents had signed. The same neighbors who had been too afraid to report Tyler's theft were now lining up to share stories of Karen's abuse of power, illegal fines, and harassment of anyone who dared question her authority. Tyler's court date came quickly, thanks to the overwhelming evidence and his decision to plead guilty rather than drag his family through a lengthy trial. The judge sentenced him to 6 months in juvenile detention, 2 years probation, and restitution to all victims totaling over $3,000. Karen's face went white as she watched her untouchable son led away to serve a sentence. The judge also mandated community service focused specifically on property crime prevention, ensuring Tyler would spend months teaching other teenagers why theft isn't worth the consequences. Karen attempted one final desperate plea, invoking her son's bright future. The judge cut her off with a stern reminder: in Maple Grove Estates, or anywhere, actions have consequences, no matter your family connections or neighborhood titles.